The majority felt that accessible performances are of a high enough standard, but not frequent enough. Currently, the split of accessible performances is about 45% audio described, 40% BSL interpreted, and 15% captioned, which doesn't match the potential audience. There tends to be gaps in programming, especially captioned performances, resulting in long periods where there are no accessible performances. The specific individual providing audio description or BSL interpretation can have an impact on people's experiences and their likelihood to attend. So it's important to use trained practitioners and gather feedback from audiences. When asked about the biggest barriers they faced, the response from audience members was diverse. Some people felt it was lack of information, the limited number of wheelchair spaces, or they found it difficult obtaining hearing assistant equipment that works properly. Getting to the venue and finding someone to help on arriving and cost were also identified as barriers. And the list goes on because everyone has different access requirements. It may be that two people with the same impairment find they face different barriers. Providing transparent information is the first step to setting clear expectations about the experiences people are likely to have at the venue. During training with venues and companies, the project emphasised the variety of experience encountered by people with different impairments, and therefore how difficult it was to be 100% accessible. Those that undertook training were surprised to learn that only 4% of disabled people are wheelchair users, and that currently about 20% of the population is considered disabled, with that statistic expected to rise. Initial discussions on access often focused on physical access as the main barrier, although venue staff were quick to identify that attitude is the biggest barrier. Once venues got thinking about the different barriers that people face due to different impairments, they started to see that captioning for someone who is hard of hearing could be seen as a service in the same way as a level access is for a wheelchair user. It was also important to emphasise that not everyone with access requirements considers themselves as disabled. Some venue staff were worried about language, and they felt they did not understand what and whom accessible services were for. They were also nervous about asking about eligibility for concessions, talking about disability, or felt that only people registered disabled could purchase concessionary tickets. The result was very poor records kept about the uptake of accessible services and the number of disabled bookers. Being registered disabled is a term no longer in use, as the register no longer exists. We also found out that venues are really passionate about making their buildings and performances accessible. This ranged from frontline staff up to managers and chief executives. Specific venues lead on best practice, such as Edinburgh Festival Theatre and King's Theatre, who allow web searches based on services. Perth Theatre, which runs a transport service for those using audio description, and Eden Court Theatre, who piloted an online BSL tour of their theatre. The organisations that took part in the Plan Ahead training were committed to undertaking access audits and creating schemes and plans following the training. This passion and commitment will take them forward in their plans. Plan Ahead was originally seen as yet another task to add to the list, but has turned out to be very useful to the organisation and our approach to access. Once organisations started to think about access, they found that it was not as onerous a task as first thought, and that although time needed to be spent looking at current practices and developing plans, the expected financial implications were not as high as predicted. Changes that can have the biggest impact cost very little or nothing at all, such as changes in attitude and adjustments to current practices or policies. Where are we now? Where are we going? The FST Access Project has seen a direct impact on experiences and attendance and an improvement in the information provided to audiences. It has also increased the confidence and planning within organisations to go forward. The current Access project is coming to an end, and the pilot of Access Scottish Theatre has concluded. However, FST, its members and the Scottish Arts Council are keen to continue to improve access for audiences, and so there is a commitment to take aspects of the project forward later in the year. If you are an audience member and would like to find out more about what will happen next, please visit www.accessscottishtheatre.com for updates. If you are a member of FST, please visit the Access Resource Centre on the FST website for further resources. There's information about the project and future developments. You can also download an expanded version of this report. Thank you for listening, watching or reading.